Wow, so the Eagles just got some surprising news coming out of the NFL Combine, as a shocking update on one of the draft's top prospects has left Eagles fans wondering if there's a chance that Howie Roseman can pull off a draft night trade for the ages to go up and get him. But what's the actual likelihood of that happening? Meanwhile, the Eagles got another update on the Myles Garrett trade front, and it's not the most promising. However, another potentially exciting Eagles trade target has emerged that could be a lot more likely. Plus, the Eagles have met with several intriguing players at the Combine, and what did A.J. Brown have to say about Micah Parsons potentially coming to Philly? Well, we're going to talk about that and all the other latest Eagles news starting right now. Hey guys, welcome to the Philly Fan 21 channel. If you're new, I'm Evan, and I cover all things Philadelphia Eagles. And let's start this off with none other than Jalen Hurts, who was honored on Tuesday as the Philadelphia Citizen of the Year, mainly for his foundational work with donating hundreds of thousands of dollars to Philadelphia schools to install air conditioning units, but also just for all the work that he does in the community in general, especially to help out the kids and the youth. So it's no surprise that he won this award. He 100% deserves it, and just congratulations to QB1 on this tremendous honor. And speaking of Hurts, he just received some very high praise from one of the NFL draft's top prospects, as with the NFL Combine going on, we got to hear from a lot of the players starting on Wednesday, one of them being Penn State standout edge rusher and also Philadelphia native and known Eagles fan, Abdul Carter. And in regards to Jalen Hurts, he essentially just called him the best quarterback in the NFL, saying, quote, "I feel like whoever was the champion, he's the best. So I feel like Jalen Hurts established himself. He'd been that, and this year, actually winning the championship, he did nothing but only certify himself." Now, it's certainly very cool to hear Carter say this about Hurts and also just express his Eagles fandom in general, as we've seen him do very publicly in the months leading up to the draft. That said, as much as he may want to be an Eagle, and as much as Eagles fans would obviously love that, it's going to be pretty difficult to make that happen. I mean, Carter is one of the very best players in the entire draft, and he's more than likely going to be one of the top picks, possibly the #1 pick overall to the Tennessee Titans. But now, maybe that's a little bit less likely, as news came out from Adam Schefter on Wednesday, as he reported that Carter actually has a stress reaction in his right foot, which, if you don't know, is the precursor for a stress fracture, and it was initially reported that he may need to end up having surgery depending on how it responded. However, after further scans, doctors told Carter that surgery is not advisable, so he's going to work out on his pro day on March 28th, and his agent Drew Rosenhaus says that he doesn't expect this injury to affect where he's drafted at all. That said, of course his agent is going to say something like that. And if you're the Eagles, is there a scenario where maybe Carter starts to fall towards the end of the top 10 and Howie swings a massive trade to go up and get him? Maybe in an ideal world, in a dream scenario, but honestly, I mean, it just doesn't seem like it's that likely. Although, what happened with Jalen Carter just 2 years ago didn't seem very likely either, and we saw how that turned out. So who knows, maybe the Eagles could shock the world once again and pull off the impossible and somehow make a crazy trade to go up and get Carter, but we'll just have to wait and see, and if I'm being fully honest, I definitely don't see this happening, but we can never fully put anything past Howie Roseman, right? And who knows, even if we don't draft him, maybe after 4 or 5 years when his contract is up, Carter's love of the Eagles guides him back to Philadelphia, but that's a topic for a much later date. And funny enough, we've pretty much said the exact same thing now for years about another former Penn State edge rusher in the Cowboys, Micah Parsons, and it's about that time now, as Parsons is currently due a big contract extension with him set to enter the final year of his rookie contract, and according to recent reports, him and the Cowboys haven't even really begun talks yet, so that's definitely very interesting. And with all the stuff that we've seen over the years, from Micah going to Philly sports games, to supporting Eagles players, to his hilarious draft night reactions to the Eagles draft picks, to just praising the Eagles in general whenever he gets the chance, obviously, the chatter that he wants to be an Eagle isn't going away anytime soon. And that's even more true after what A.J. Brown just said on Gilly's $1 Million Worth of Game podcast.
I think Micah want to be an Eagle.
He do. He want to be Eagle bad.
He love Philly.
He be on the phone with Slay and all that shit.
I don't know about you, but I just think it's absolutely hilarious that we now have A.J. Brown himself feeding into this narrative that Micah Parsons wants to be an Eagle. Now, do I actually think that this is going to happen next offseason? No, I don't, and I expect Parsons and the Cowboys to reach an agreement at some point. Obviously, I mean, we've seen the Cowboys have these situations drag on for a really long time, so maybe it happens much later in the offseason, but still, at some point, I expect an agreement to be reached. But it is interesting to talk about, and we'll just have to wait and see how the whole situation unfolds. And the same thing can be said about one of the hot topics going around the NFL right now, being the Myles Garrett trade situation. And in Philly, the talk has obviously been about whether the Eagles could swing a blockbuster trade for the Browns' superstar edge rusher. Now, in my video on Wednesday, I went into detail on some comments from Howie Roseman coming out of the Combine that make it seem like that's probably not in the cards for this offseason, and now we have even more news to support that claim, as NFL insider Adam Schefter was on 97.5 The Fanatic on Wednesday, where he was asked about a possible Garrett trade to the Eagles, and he said, quote, "Look, I just don't see it. I don't see it." Now, there have been things that have happened in this league that I haven't seen coming, so I always say anything is always possible, but I don't see that trade happening. For all the Eagles fans that have asked, will they trade for Myles Garrett? I guess you could, but I would be floored. So there you go. That's more evidence that Myles Garrett probably isn't coming to Philly. Now, obviously, again, Howie Roseman is no stranger to making shocking moves, so we'll have to wait and see, but at this point, I'm pretty confident that that's not going to happen. Moving on, though, another potential Eagles trade target may have actually emerged Wednesday with another report from Adam Schefter, as he tweeted out that the Titans are giving Pro Bowl linebacker Harold Landry permission to seek a trade. And he goes on to say that Landry started all 17 games last year, where he had 71 tackles, 9 sacks, 18 pressures, and 4 pass deflections, while he also has 31.5 sacks over the past 3 seasons, and he's due a $17.5 million base salary this upcoming season. So that's certainly very interesting. I mean, on one hand, Landry is a very good player, and he'd be a much cheaper option than Myles Garrett, both with what the Eagles would actually have to give up in a trade to get him, and he'd also be cheaper money-wise. That said, with a base salary of $17.5 million in each of the next 2 seasons, along with a cap hit of $24 million in each of those 2 years as well, I'd say a trade is both pretty unlikely and also not worth it at all. I mean, I think Josh Sweat and Harold Landry are probably about on the same level, yet all signs are pointing to the Eagles letting Sweat walk in free agency because he's going to get paid probably a pretty similar contract to the one Landry's getting paid right now. So I don't see any reason why the Eagles would make that trade. That said, Landry does have a potential out in his contract this offseason, and if the Titans can't find a trade partner, there's a chance that they could just flat out cut him. And if that happens, then I'd be much more interested, because maybe with all the losing that Landry and the Titans have done over the past few years, maybe he could take a discounted contract to come to Philadelphia to try and win. So this will definitely be something to watch over these next few weeks, and I'm curious to know your guys' thoughts about a potential Harold Landry move to Philly. I mean, personally at this point, when it comes to the edge rusher position, I kind of just want to see the Eagles draft somebody, if I'm being fully honest, and I feel like there's a very strong possibility that that happens, because this is obviously a deep defensive line draft. There's plenty of good players to choose from in this class, and Howie Roseman and the Eagles obviously love linemen on both sides, and they tend to build their teams from the trenches. Plus, they're always looking to add more.
Never feel like we have enough O linemen or D linemen. Always on the lookout for those positions at every level, whether it's in free agency, whether it's in the draft, whether it's after the draft, whether it's on the street. It's really like an unhealthy obsession, Zach, to be honest with you.
There's definitely a lot of guys that the Eagles could look at if they want to bolster their D-line specifically in this draft. Personally, my early favorite, having done minimal research so far, is Tennessee edge rusher James Pierce. If he could fall to 32, I mean, that guy just looks like he's going to be an absolute stud pass rusher, so he could definitely go very early on in the draft, but a lot of the mock drafts that I've seen have actually had him falling to the end of the first round, or maybe even into the second round, so maybe the Eagles could have an outside shot, or maybe a realistic shot, who knows, but still, there's a ton more options for the Eagles to look at besides just Pierce. And that includes a guy who they actually just met with at the Combine in Ole Miss's edge rusher Princely Umanmielen. And this is a guy who was coming off a 10.5 sack season in his lone year at Ole Miss, but has really just been a productive player throughout his college career, which included 4 years with the Florida Gators. And he's someone who is very likely to be available towards the end of the first round or even the second round, so he'll definitely be a name to watch moving forward in the pre-draft process, especially when we get to those coveted top 30 visits. Now, as far as the rest of the Eagles Combine meetings go, it'd be pretty tough in this one video to go into all the guys that the Eagles have met with individually, but there does seem to be a clear trend, as on offense, they've strictly met with tight ends at the time of this recording, including guys like Texas's Gunnar Helm and LSU's Mason Taylor, both of which could be second or third round options for the Birds. And on defense, they've met with guys at all 3 levels, but most of their formal meetings have been with defensive linemen and linebackers, including interior D lineman TJ Sanders from South Carolina and Cam Jackson from Florida. who could both be options to fill the void that will likely be left by Milton Williams. And also, there's linebackers Barrett Carter from Clemson and Shamar James from Florida. So this is all definitely interesting, and these guys, along with many others to be discussed later, will be names to keep your eyes on moving forward. Make no mistake though, just because the Eagles are meeting with these linebackers at the Combine does not make Zack Baun any less of a priority going into free agency. I mean, as I talked about in my last video, Howie Roseman straight up said that the Eagles are going to make a concerted effort to try and re-sign him, and since then, he's made that even more clear. As he said, quote, "First team All-Pro, top 5 defensive player of the year, tremendous person, made a huge difference during the regular season, made a huge difference during the playoffs, made a huge difference in the Super Bowl. Those are guys that you want to keep. There's no doubt about it." So yeah, there you go. Again, the Eagles clearly really want to re-sign Zack Baun, and hopefully that gets done very soon. Plus, in relation to that, the NFL has officially set the salary cap for the 2025 NFL season at $279.2 million, which according to Anthony DeBona will give the Eagles around $22 million to work with before making any moves, which, to be clear, there are plenty of moves that the Eagles can still make that'll give them even more cap space. So look for some of those to happen soon, as well as a Baun extension, and overall, it'll be interesting just to see what the Eagles do with all this money in free agency and throughout the entire offseason. But now, moving on to some notable coaching news for the Eagles, the Birds just hired a new offensive line coach in Greg Austin to rejoin the staff, as he had previously spent time with the Eagles from 2013 to 2015, and most recently, he worked with the Jaguars and Doug Peterson just last year. Plus, very interestingly, Austin also spent 3 years with now Eagles center Cam Jurgens during his tenure at Nebraska, so that's definitely notable. Now, I would assume that Austin is going to probably fill the role left by TJ Paganetti, who joined Kellen Moore's staff in New Orleans, although it is not quite clear yet, so we'll have to wait and see, but overall, I definitely think it's a solid hire. Plus, in addition to that, the Eagles also interviewed Syracuse offensive associate head coach and QB coach Nunzio Campanile for their vacant QB coach position. Now, on one hand, he did help Syracuse to become the top passing offense in the NCAA last year. However, he has no NFL coaching experience, and his experience as a QB coach in general is limited. So I can't say I love that. I'd probably rather have someone with a lot more experience, but regardless, we'll see how it pans out. But now, the NFL Combine is obviously continuing to roll on here. We saw drills start on Thursday, so I'm going to have plenty more coverage on that coming in the future, and also, obviously, I'm going to be continuing to cover all the Eagles news throughout this entire offseason, so if you guys don't want to miss any of that, then make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, and also drop a like down below to show some support, because it really does help me out a ton. See if we can get to at least 600 likes on today's video, and also leave a comment down below just regarding anything that I talked about in this video. Do you think there is any chance that the Eagles get Abdul Carter? Honestly, if I'm being honest, probably not, but we'll see. And also, if you want to watch another Eagles video, you can check this one out right here. And with all that being said, that's pretty much all I got for this one, guys. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.